Just when I think I've hit the limit on what I can do to my car, I continue to get surprised at the amount of options out there. There have been two fairly large installs looming around, and today I decided to check one of them off the list. So today we are installing a full car body kit by a company called Extreme Online Store. They sent this out to me, and I have to say I was very nervous about all the screwing that's involved in this install and what lay ahead of me. So first, to get it fresh in our minds, let's take a look at what the Model 3 looks like stock right from the factory. It's a little hard to forget what they look like because depending on where you live, there are usually 2 or 3 of them at every intersection, but just to be sure, it looks good, and I think most people don't have an issue with the way that the Model 3 looks. But with thousands of these coming out every single month being put into the market, it's becoming harder and harder to make yours stand out if that's something important to you. This kit makes it look very aggressive and different. Now, I couldn't install in my garage because it's being used for our kitchen remodel, so I had 7 hours before our massive rainstorm was coming, and I had to go basically full speed on this project. So this is made of reinforced ABS plastic and comes in glossy black. Right now, there are no other options, but this is what I really would have chosen anyway, so I'm pretty happy with it. I really don't go for the carbon fiber look, just not really my style. And when it comes to a lot of this type of thing, if it's not done just right, they can really look, well, cheap. First, I started with the rear bumper diffuser. I would recommend setting up a table and taking your time with this. Everyone is going to see this stuff. Now, there are lots of screws involved with this overall kit, as you will see, but not much with this diffuser. Also, shout out to CfTesla channel for putting together a video illustrating a lot of this. Some of these steps you're gonna see are definitely from him, so I really appreciate your work, man. Thank you. Now, no instructions came in the box, so I decided to loosely fit this first. It was obvious that putting the corners on first, since they attach to either side using the OEM screws, was the way to go. Otherwise, you're kind of just guessing on the middle part. And to be honest with you, you really can't start there. You really need to start with the outer corners. And even though you're seeing the steps now and how to do this, I would still recommend you going through and actually setting this all up loosely yourself before you put tape on, just so you get a sense of how the motion goes in once you have the tape on there. Now, I will mention that for the entire project, the tools I used were just a 10mm socket, painter's tape, and an impact gun. Really nothing else. So I already had mud flaps on the car in the areas that this was going to be installed, so I had to remove those first. Then I went and cleaned the whole area up really good because tape does not stick to dirt very well, even 3M tape. They do send small alcohol wipes in the box, but there's not nearly enough, not even close to enough to really do the job. What I did was wash my car front to back. I wiped the whole thing down with a microfiber cloth in the area I was going to be installing this, and then I used the alcohol wipes the best that I could in those areas where it was going to be the most impactful for the tape to stick to it. So first step is to prep the 3M double-sided tape. I ran it along the inside edges where it would be connected with the actual car. First, I did the 2 side pieces, the corner pieces, the first ones we installed, and then I went and did the large piece. So I got them all prepped and done, ready to go, so when it was time to put them on, I could just simply go and put them all on. Peel the tape off one of the corner pieces, line up the holes, and get the screws both started. Then push the tape right onto the car. It will line up easy. The socket I used to tighten the OEM screws is a 10mm, in case you're curious. Well, actually it was a 13 by 32nd socket because I couldn't find a 10mm, but you know, who's paying attention to that? I went a little overboard with the tape. You really only need to use it until you get the screws in, but I just put it in and just put it everywhere anyway. Next, I prepped for the centerpiece itself. I took a bunch of the blue painter's tape and basically looped it and stuck it back to itself on the car, right ready to go. So all I would have to do is just pull it down when I got that piece stuck where I wanted it to be. Next, line it up and press it on. There is a slot and 2 screws on the corner pieces that align with the centerpiece, so it is easy to get it lined up. However, I still managed to do this wrong. At least I think it was me. It's possible the piece wasn't cut right or my car's fenders were a little off, but the right side didn't quite stick all the way on. There was a little bit of a gap. I just couldn't get it to stay stuck to the car, not all the way. So yeah, it has a small gap, but that was really my only issue over this entire project. Now, as I pressed, I put the tape on, hoping it would help it stay, although I'm not sure why, since tape doesn't need to dry, and after I had it on there for an hour, it looked the same as when I first put it on, so probably not necessary. Or maybe it is. So after that, I put the screws in that connect the corners to the center piece. You can't miss them, they're all pre-drilled. By the way, if you are still watching, you must not hate this video too much, so go down and help me out by hitting that like and subscribe button right below this video. It tells the YouTube algorithm that this video is useful and people are watching it, and it sends it out there to the YouTube universe for people looking for this kind of thing. So next came the front splitter. This came in 4 different pieces. 3 of them connect together before it's even put on. Now I had to run to the hardware store because either I lost the screws or I didn't have them in the package when it arrived. This was quite annoying though because I couldn't buy small enough screws, so I had to add washers to not penetrate right through the other side of it because the screws were just simply too long. And it ended up looking kind of ghetto. You can kind of look down there if you're flat on the ground and see it, but whatever. By the way, I bought this Milwaukee Impact Gun for this build. What a cool tool. It is small enough to get underneath of the Tesla in most of the areas for this build, and the other pieces, which is a small little lift from the jack, I was able to get right in there. My other gun, not a chance. So then I put on the tape, running it along the edges, on the sides, and the top. The last piece of the splitter you'll put on after you screw this piece onto the car, and you're about to see a whole ton of screwing coming up. I would recommend hiring a buddy, or in my case, one of my amazing neighbors. You need to align this one just right with the wheel walls, and you can't do that with the other end hanging down. You really want 2 people there lifting it together, putting it right in place the first time, and then you just quickly peel that tape you already had preset right down, and it holds it right into place. Now that the tape was on, I had to go in and start putting in the screws. But in order to get my impact gun under there, I had to actually jack up the car. So now to do this, I put the car's parking brake on, and you do this by holding down the park button. A lot of people press park and it does go into park, but to put the parking brake on, you press and hold. Then I put in the lift puck and jacked up the car a few inches. It didn't need a whole lot. I then put in 2 screws on either side. Don't get too excited, there is still a lot of screwing to come on this splitter, 10 more screws in fact. By the way, is one of you keeping count of how many times I say the word screw on this install video? And then it was time for the last piece. This one has 10 screws and they all go into your car. They go through both pieces right up into your bumper. Now I know there's been a lot of screwing going on so far, and I know a lot of you may be frowning on that right now, but I promise you at the end of this video you will see that it's been worth it. Way worth it. Next came the side skirts. These started the same as the others. Start by taping the sides and the top and the rest of part that touches the car. Also be really careful when you're putting this tape on. If there is a nick in the tape, it can really easily separate from the protective plastic pieces, and now you just have a mess. I had to cut the tape many different times and create new starting points. Somehow the 2 pieces separate from each other and then you just can't seem to get it back together, so you have to cut it. Now I did the same thing with the painter's tape to get it all prepped and ready for the screws to go in. These have something like 6 screws, so you really want it held in place so you can get those screws in. Next I went and snagged another one of my neighbors. My neighbor Mike held his and got his in place first, then I put mine on, and the whole thing just lined up absolutely perfectly. We threw the tape on it and it was ready to be screwed in. We repeated this on the other side, and next it was ready for some screwing. So to do this, I first jacked up the car so I had room for the impact gun again. I almost had room without it, but it just made it a little bit easier. Then it was just a matter of fastening it to the car. Now, I know I could have used the word screw again there, but this video is starting to feel a little dirty. All these screws went in fairly easy, just like the rest of them. Really didn't have to put a whole lot of impact to actually get the screws to go in. So I repeated this then on the other side, and about this time I was actually starting to get really excited because I was starting to see it all come together. By the way, did I tell you that my new impact gun has a light on it? I'm easily amused. I ripped the tape off and went and got my very last piece, the trunk spoiler. I've always wanted a spoiler. Spoiler alert, I've always wanted a spoiler, get it? Oh, that was terrible. Now, since this only fastens with tape, I kind of went ham on the taping, you know what I mean? I put a layer on the top and the bottom, and that was just the first round. Then I spent what felt like 8 hours trying to peel the tape protective piece off to access the sticky stuff, and then sort of stuck it on. Now, I did some practice with it first. I put it there and kind of went forward and back, did some motion to kind of get used to it, you know, muscle memory stuff. And then in true Cody fashion, when it was time, I messed it up. I had pushed the top down too fast and the bottom was just really not stuck in the right place. There was a gap about the width of my finger and the corner edges were lifted off of the car. So luckily, it came off very easily, just popped right off with very minimal damage to the tape. Had to do a couple cuts, adjust a couple things, no big deal. But then I went back to the garage, put a second piece of tape right down the middle to get maximum stickiness on there, and then simply went up and stuck it on. So now my next big concern was, can I get this thing out of my driveway? I live on a little bit of an uphill driveway and I have a pretty substantial curb that goes up to the driveway. So in preparation for this, I ordered off Amazon these two things that basically go in your, and allows the car to not drop down there into that hole. And you can see here that as I'm coming off the curb, it comes off no problem. And going back on, look at this. The car actually clears the driveway before the wheels even start going up on that little thing I bought. Why can't I think of what it's called? Driveway ramp. That's what it was. I didn't just remember, I looked it up on Amazon. So I think it would have actually made it onto the driveway without them. It actually doesn't lower it too much. And there's no issue on the back. The back really didn't move it down at all. So now, are you ready to see it? Amazing, right? Oh my gosh, it looks so good. You guys, so good. Better than you're seeing in the video. Like, it looks mean, it looks aggressive, it looks like it's not at all the car I started with. Like, look at the comparisons here, right? Like, wow, totally different, beautiful. I am so excited about this build. So if you want to check these out, I will link to their page down below in the description. Now, I apologize, I normally have discounts for you guys when I do stuff like this, but I don't have any discounts for you guys on this one. But it sure was a fun build, and I'm really glad that I agreed to do this install. I mean, the product feels solid, like really high quality, and all the pieces and holes and everything lined up perfectly, which is really rare for me. Usually when I get something from IKEA or anywhere else, I'm putting it together and the hole and the thing are like this. It just doesn't work. Oh my gosh, I'm doing it again. So the install took me between 5 to 6 hours to really do all of this, but you gotta remember that's also including moving around cameras and repeating crap because I forgot to hit the record, that sort of thing. Overall, it's pretty good. So yeah, I'm really happy with overall how this all went, and we'll see in future videos how this all looks. We'll see if anything fell off, as you'll see in future drives, but it all feels really solid and I can't imagine it's going anywhere. Now, depending on when you were seeing this video, I have another very intrusive install coming that involves plugging more stuff into the computer of my car, taking off a whole bunch of interior trim, running wires all around, taking half my trunk apart. You don't want to miss it, so make sure that if you haven't already, you subscribe to the channel, you've hit the like button, and that way you won't miss any of these next videos. So that's going to be it for this one. Thanks again for coming back and watching, and I'll see you guys on the next drive or install video.